unlimited love of a teacher. The question of Haytam. Question: Dear the Honorable Teacher, I do not have talent, also have not had many virtues. If you accept to let me stay to practice and study, I will do my best to listen to and practice your teachings to the end of my practice path. No matter what hardship, misery or hunger, I will not complain. Answer: I am elated and moved when reading your cordial words of full enthusiasm for practice. How can I not accept? Once you have had the determination and perseverance to practice to the end without leaving halfway through the practice, I certainly will not leave you helpless in your practice path. I will teach you from start to end so that you will have sufficient intelligence and virtues to accomplish the path of liberation, particularly to raise the true voice of Buddhism and also resurrect the Buddhist method. The true method of the Buddha was buried by Brahmanism very long time ago. Except when you find that the practice path following Buddhism to let go of greed, anger and ignorance is too difficult and living a life of basic material conditions makes you feel uncomfortable, as well as cultivating the conducts and virtues to be true humans without creating suffering to yourself and to others makes you feel that you are put at the greatest disadvantage, in the secular life of this world. You have to endure everything and people always trample upon your heart while you never fight anyone because these are the holy conducts of the great ones to go beyond the secular and vulgar life. As such, you may give up the practice and I cannot do anything but look toward your footsteps. I have so much commiseration but do not know how to pull you out of the ignorant and dark ideology of vulgar ones who only have pride and vain honor of the secular world. For so many generations, this ignorant ideology has killed human beings in sufferings, made them die of illness. People have foolishly lived with heroic ego, with complex, with amour proper, with heroic nature. In Buddhism, hero, complex and amour proper are obstacles, of illness and the things that create sufferings to oneself and to others. Ordinary people considers these things as honor that they have to protect and thus to fight others, while for Buddhism, these things are obstacles in hell. After quite a long duration of practice, you do not see that you have any miracle power. Instead you only live the boring and lonely days, and there are much resentment and sadness. And therefore you become disheartened and look for a different method. In that case I cannot do anything regarding your karmic conditions. Only because you do not have enough belief in the right method of the Buddha and thus take a different path, similar to your brothers and sisters, then I could only watch my beloved disciples leave. Even though you come here to practice and study for one day, the affection between teacher and students will never fade. Later, the flow of life will lead you to the uncertain and dark path of human life full of hardships and bitterness. For almost 26 years from 1980 to 2005, I have made countless efforts to teach and train some people so that they could have the precepts of virtues to be true humans and holy ones. The most serious practice is the application of the method of dwelling alone to help people to protect their six senses, to limit their activities, to focus their minds and bodies on the practice of liberation, to stay away from the obstacles, to perform the mind of unshakableness in front of illness and feelings. It means to help the mind totally abandon desire and of illness to enter the first concentration. However, people were influenced by the expanded canons and thus kept suppressing their minds in practice. They did not listen to me to dwell alone. They would either sit in meditation to suppress their minds or meet others to talk. Some people said they had already entered the third and fourth concentrations. Some said they had already entered the concentration of losing self. Some said they had already had the miracle power to fly to the space. Some said they had already stopped the breath. Some said they had no longer heard the sound, etc., but they all sneakily broke the conduct of dwelling alone and tried to find way to talk to one another. Finally, one disciple of mine bluntly did not accept my conduct of dwelling alone and asked me to allow him to meet and talk to his wife, children and friends. He said after a short period of time he would attain miracle powers and would teach me. As such, after the time of the Buddha, people did not properly practice but wanted to do better than the Buddha, like the patriarchs Nagarjuna, Vansabandhu, Asanga, Asvaosa. And now my disciples were also the same. They wanted to practice better than me only because I did not demonstrate miracle powers while there were those in need of miracle powers. It is against Buddhism when Buddhist practitioners are fond of miracle powers. People following Buddhist practice break the conduct of dwelling alone but want to attain full enlightenment. It is similar to using sand to cook and hope to have rice meal. How can it be? My disciples did not expect that. Finally I asked them to dwell alone 100%. They broke the conduct of dwelling alone and gave up practice. They had no idea that I strictly put them in the conduct of dwelling alone for them to completely let go of greed, anger and ignorance, completely abandon desire and of illness, so that they could enter the first concentration of Buddhism, that is the first concentration. Or in other words, to help them to enter the concentration of unshakable mind so that they could master the life. But they did not accept the conduct of dwelling alone. They even said, the Buddha did not teach the conduct of dwelling alone. The Buddha broke the attachment to the conduct of dwelling alone. Because previously the Buddha had practiced the method of dwelling alone of heresy, and whenever seeing anyone, he would run away so that he would not meet anybody. Due to such dwelling alone, the Buddha had not found liberation, and thus he abandoned such way of dwelling alone. My disciples did not understand that dwelling alone meant to protect the six senses, and thus they used the Sutta of the lion's roar and the Nikayas to oppose me. They did not know that dwelling alone of Buddhism meant to prevent the mind from being unrestrained and wandering. As such, dwelling alone of Buddhism means the protection of the six senses, the method of letting go of greed, anger and ignorance, abandoning desire and of illness. Dwelling alone of Buddhism means to forbid idle talk, useless talk. Dwelling alone of Buddhism means to stay away from the secular animation and entertainment. For those who still like entertainment, meeting and talking, it is only a waste of time if they follow Buddhist practice, because these people can never let go of greed, anger and ignorance. In Buddhism, essentially by letting go of greed, anger, ignorance and obstacles, people accomplish the liberation path. The conduct of dwelling alone is the decisive factor in letting go of greed, anger and ignorance. Thanks to this let go we have concentration. All of my disciples did not believe in the conduct of dwelling alone. Therefore I had to take the 42 verses of the Buddha which taught dwelling alone to demonstrate, and many other suttas of the Buddha teaching dwelling alone in the original Nikayas. However, they still did not believe. Thong even challenged me, please allow me to meet my wife, children and friends. I will practice and attain liberation accomplishment by a different method instead of the conduct of dwelling alone, and will show you the miracle powers as above mentioned. The majority of my disciples did not believe my method. It meant they did not believe the method of the Buddha. They were those who wanted to be better than the Buddha, wanted to introduce a new way of practice, but in the end they were similar to Nagarjuna, Vansabandhu, Asanga, Asvaosa etc., who were only good at arguments and words. I also would like to see what these disciples who wanted to be better than the Buddha and better than me could do to benefit themselves. If you are determined to seek the path of liberation from life, aging, sickness, death and put an end to rebirth, you should persevere in practicing the method of creating thoughts to lead the mind to the state of liberation. This method requires perseverance to gain effectiveness. Every day you need to do your best to let go of the obstacles in your mind when these things often appear in the four places of body, feelings, mind and things. If you can repel them, you immediately have the liberation in your mind and body. Your mind and body will be peaceful, blissful and carefree. Buddhism is not difficult to practice. If there is difficulty, it is because people do not know that they wrongly practice and thus suppress their minds and bodies. And particularly they dare not let go of the secular life, due to wrong practice and not daring to let go of secular life. Their practice only has external appearance and they do not have complete liberation. Buddhist practice is not to sit in meditation or to walk. Instead it is to repulse the obstacles in the mind, but we use the sitting and walking to help us easily stay awake to let go of obstacles. To completely let go of the mind of obstacles means to abandon desire and of illness. To abandon desire and of illness means to let go of the 5 hindrances and the 7 fetters. Instead of letting go of aimless and fast thoughts as taught in the expanded canons. You should note that this practice is very easy and your body and mind are peaceful and at ease without any tiredness or difficulty. Practice brings immediate results. Normally you should be awake and remember to guide the mind. The mind is like a piece of soil and no longer has greed, anger, ignorance. You should remember to regularly repeat it and don't forget it. To forget means lack of being awake. This is for the mind at normal state. But when the mind is not normal and is subjected to obstacles, you use the concentration of anasrava to contemplate and repulse them. Once you are determined to follow me to practice the right method of original Buddhism, you should make efforts to practice and persevere in strictly adhering to the teachings to completely let go of greed, anger, ignorance, during 24 hours without endeavor. The mind concentrates on the breath, without endeavor. When walking, the mind always concentrates on the walking steps, such as the mind which has completely let go of greed, anger, ignorance, such as the mind which is completely pure, and such as the mind which has abandoned desire and of illness. Such way of practice is not difficult. Every second, every minute you only need to contemplate the obstacles which appear in the 4 places of body, feelings, mind and things. When there is no obstacle, the mind will concentrate on the body. When there is obstacle, you should use the concentration of anasrava to repulse it until the mind is like a piece of soil. When your mind is like a piece of soil, it means you have had complete liberation. A disciple who is determined to practice to seek liberation would not leave one's good knowledgeable advisor no matter what hardships are. No matter what adverse circumstances try to brutally drive the person away, they are only the objects for the person to practice to let go of greed, anger, ignorance, and the mind is like a piece of soil. At that moment, you apply the concentration of anasrava to contemplate your cause and effect to let go of the mind of hatred and resentment. Instead of being similar to the secular people who hold resentment and hatred in their heart in front of adverse situations, you have seen the evidence that many people who came to me to study and practice have been challenged and tested to see whether their minds have let go of greed, anger and ignorance or not. That is whether they have lived in accordance with the conducts and virtues for being true humans, which regard humans as the center for development and teach people not to create sufferings to oneself and to others. Though I taught and instructed people to practice and cultivate the conducts and virtues of patience, acceptance and agreement, finally people had patience, acceptance and agreement on the outside. But in their mind they had hatred, therefore they often tried to speak ill of their good knowledgeable advisor with others and humiliate them to vent their hatred, and when they left the monastery, they even caused more defamation. You were strangers from different corners of the world coming here to practice and study, you did not have feud with one another. Why did such things happen? These things happened because of the cause and effect conditions. The cause and effect conditions cause people to meet. You meet others to let go of greed, anger and ignorance, to abandon desire and of illness, to attain liberation, to master your minds, to master your life, to learn the morality of not creating sufferings to oneself and to others, to become the holy ones. It is extremely difficult for a teacher to teach disciples the morality of liberation. Only when the love of the teacher is as vast as the sky and the earth and his mind is like the soil and the water, dare he teach people this morality. Why so? Because human beings have never seen or heard or studied this morality. When the Buddha attained full enlightenment and taught his disciples this morality, this duration was too short, only 100 years. Since then nobody has mentioned it. Therefore at present to introduce and teach this morality is an extremely difficult task. The morality of true liberation for people not creating sufferings to oneself and to others brings everyone a life of peace and happiness by the noble conducts and virtues of patience, acceptance and agreement. People make themselves happy and others happy. However, when I applied these noble conducts and virtues to teach my disciples, I have received too huge gratitude. Nevertheless, I always love and forgive my students. If a student is determined to return to practice, I am ready to teach each method of let go to perform the morality to be true human and not to create sufferings to oneself and to others, because I think it is necessary to have people with complete morality which is based on the causality law and considers humans as its center for development, as examples for others to follow. This will make it easier to teach morality in the future. Human beings on this planet are in need of a moral foundation to treat others and bring others peace and happiness. I think in Chanhu Monastery, there is a humble start of the fire of this moral foundation of Buddhism, which is based on the causality law and considers humans as its center for development. This is the first time since the 100 years after the Buddha's entering Nibbana. I was the one to apply this morality to first teach the monks, nuns, and lay followers here and have made them stagger and waver. They almost could not endure it. All the monks and male lay followers as well as the nuns and female lay followers here wanted to give up. I understand very well the way of practicing concentration of Buddhism. We particularly have to let go of greed, anger and ignorance so that the mind is like a piece of soil. Only with this can we have concentration. And if we want to practice this let go for the mind to be like a piece of soil, we have to live in accordance with the three conducts of eating, sleeping and dwelling alone, and the three virtues of patience, acceptance and agreement. However, among all the monks, nuns, male and female lay followers here, no one could live in accordance with the three virtues and three conducts. If they do not live in accordance with the three virtues and three conducts, the mind cannot be like a piece of soil, And if the mind is not like a piece of soil, they cannot live in accordance with the morality of not creating sufferings to oneself and to others. And if a person still creates sufferings to oneself and to others, the person cannot have liberation. Every monk, nun and lay follower coming here for practice violated the 3 virtues and 3 conducts. They thus finally had to leave. However, in my heart as the teacher, I have a wish that one day they would be awakened and realize that the 3 virtues and 3 conducts are the great noble morality for not creating sufferings to oneself and to others, so that they would return to practice the conducts and virtues and become the bright examples for others to follow. For others to rely on such light of morality to live and not to create sufferings to oneself and to others, thereby transforming this world into the realm of heaven and ultimate bliss. A teacher always wishes to have the disciples who practice not only for themselves but also for all people. Only these disciples can have sufficient dauntless fortitude to live in accordance with the 3 virtues and 3 conducts. Almost all monks, nuns and lay followers come here to practice for themselves. There has not been anyone having the wish to practice for all people. As the practice path of Buddhism is very difficult, if a person only thinks and practices for oneself, the person can never live in accordance with the morality of not creating sufferings to oneself and to others. Therefore, every time when a disciple leaves, the heart of the teacher is deeply sad and has commiseration for the disciple who is walking towards the impasse of the dark night. Because the teacher knows there is only one path of precept, concentration and wisdom of Buddhism that would lead them to complete liberation and end of sufferings of human life. Apart from this, there is no better method. If they leave the method of precept, concentration and wisdom and look for other method, they themselves open the door to walk into the hell. As such, when my disciples left, my heart was uneasy and felt compassionate for a human life that did not have good fortune to practice Buddhism, did not have good fortune for liberation. The most unfortunate ones were those who followed me to practice, but had a passion for miracle powers. After some time following me to practice, they only wished that I would demonstrate miracle powers, but they were disappointed because I did not demonstrate miracle powers. Henceforth they thought that I did not have miracle powers, and therefore one after another, they left. Seeing these disciples leaving, my heart felt sad and had commiseration. Why were they so ignorant? What is practice to have miracle powers for? It is to show off and perform magic to entertain others to receive praise and admiration, but there is no benefit for themselves and for others. Is this right? The ambition of these people is too high. They want to become Superman and better than everyone in this world. What is to be better than everyone in this world for? To have the world hegemony. If they want to become such Supermen, they should go to Tibet to practice with the lamas. The Buddha did not teach such kind of thing, but instead only taught us to be humans with morality of not creating sufferings to ourselves and to others. If this can be realized, this world will be heaven and we will be fully satisfied. Dear my disciples, do you understand my heart? I only hope the disciples believe me. I will lead you in the path of morality to be true humans, which is based on causality law and considers humans as its center for development. To escape the nature of animals to become true human beings who are with noble hearts not creating sufferings to yourselves and to others. You are determined to follow me to seek the path to go beyond sufferings. Why don't you let go of secular habits to hold sufferings in your hearts? Why don't you let go of the attachment to miracle powers of Lamaism, the vague, abstract and illusory arguments of Zennism, and the superstition of Sukhavati sect? Meanwhile you slight and discard the moral foundation which is based on causality law and considers humans as its center for development that I taught, and you look for the sublime things. You are being deceived by religions with such sublime things. Seeing the ignorant disciples being lost in the practice path and the majority of them being lulled into the metaphysical dream and miracles powers by religions, the teacher feels so sad and has love and compassion for these disciples, but the teacher could not do anything when they had already sowed the bitter seeds and now had to reap the bitter fruits. The law of cause and effect is too strict. If these disciples do not change the seeds, then in thousands of lives, they would have to receive the bitter fruits, no matter how much I love you. I could not do anything for you, but you yourselves have to love yourselves. You have to renounce the wrongs and receive the right things. No one can renounce the wrongs and receive the right things for you, but you yourselves have to do it. You could not understand the unlimited love of the teacher when you came to ask me to accept you to practice and study. I knew it was difficult for you to renounce the secular habits and worldly sentiments. However, in front of your cordial hearts, I had no heart to refuse. Once I accepted you, I had the responsibility. If you followed my teachings and practiced without mistakes, my heart was so happy. But if you did not correctly follow my teachings, my heart was deeply sad, because I knew one day you would leave my arms, the arms of love that would wholeheartedly lead you safely from beginning to the end of the path of morality, which is based on the causality law and considers humans as its center for development, to be humans not creating sufferings to yourselves and to others. This did not satisfy your aspiration because your minds had craving for a higher thing. Then you left, one after another. You left with a resentment because I did not allow you to have idle talks, not allow you to let your mind be unrestrained and wandering or run after secular thoughts, and not allow you to practice heretical methods, but I could not forbid your minds. Only you had to have self-awareness and be aware of what method was right and what method was wrong. In late afternoons, when the sun set below the horizon, I looked toward the gate of the monastery as if looking toward faraway places where my disciples were practicing wrong methods. In the future, they would bury their lives in the ocean of sufferings forever. The teacher has unlimited love and is always ready to forgive disciples' faults of being ungrateful, and loves the disciples until the last breath. In the late afternoons of heavy rain, I smile and forgive the ungrateful ones.